Robert Greene grasped a truth about human desire that most people will never truly accept. Attraction does not arise from objective reality, from who you really are in the factual sense. It is born inside the mind of the observer, in the story they weave about you, in the gaps they are forced to fill with their own imagination. Mystery is the pressure that turns an ordinary presence into an unsolved problem, a puzzle that resists being neatly categorized. The moment you expose everything, your thoughts, your fears, your daily patterns, you don't simply become honest, you destroy the possibility of fantasy. And without fantasy, seduction suffocates. The human mind is built not for passive reception, but for active meaning-making. Whenever it encounters something that does not fully make sense, it does not rest. It awakens, it starts scanning, interpreting, filling in missing pieces. It replays moments. It chews on small details. That is why some people become unforgettable, even when they appear to do nothing extraordinary. They rarely supply the full picture. They offer fragments. They leave endings open. They let questions remain hanging in the air long after the interaction has ended. In daily life, real mystery does not come from theatrics. It begins with conscious restraint, with what you deliberately choose not to explain. This is not emotional coldness, it is self-possession. You decide what is accessible and what remains yours. You structure information, revealing it in layers, not all at once. You allow discovery to be a process, not a download. At a certain point, the other person no longer feels like they are just talking to you. They feel as though they're exploring a landscape, uncovering hidden rooms in a house they've only just entered. And the act of imagining who you are, of assembling those fragments, requires energy. Emotional energy invested creates connection. The deeper the effort, the more costly it becomes to disengage. That is why mystery cannot be reduced to some little tactic or trick. It is the hidden architecture that supports long-term seduction from underneath, the frame that holds everything else together. To master mystery is not to become aloof or unreachable. It is to control access. The real power does not lie in withholding everything. It lies in the precision of what you do reveal. Enough to create closeness, never enough to become transparent. The instant someone senses that they have you figured out, that your depths have been fully mapped, your perceived value begins to decline. If you compress the richness of your experiences and complexities into a few intense hours of oversharing, you steal from the other person the one thing that keeps desire alive, the joy of continued discovery. Discovery is the engine of attraction. Without new things to uncover, interest slides into flat familiarity. Practically, this means speaking with intention rather than compulsion. You can talk about what excites you, what you've built, where you've won, where you've learned, yet always leave one piece unresolved, mention a transformative trip, and then move on before you wring it dry. Indicate the direction of your ambitions without handing over the full blueprint. When you end a story midway, the mind doesn't simply shut down, it continues the story alone. Predictability robs you of leverage. Ambiguity invites pursuit. Hints are not mistakes, they are deliberate openings. Each unexplained fragment becomes a small hook that tugs on the other person's psyche until they want to ask more. Another principle: guard your smaller secrets. You are under no obligation to allow full emotional entry early on. Privacy is not hostility, it is self-respect. When something is given away too easily, it is rarely cherished. When intimate details are revealed too quickly, they blur and slip from memory. Many people confuse mystery with emotional unavailability. That is not strategy. That is fear posing as wisdom. The real seducer understands the importance of contrast. He can be warm, focused, and attentive while keeping part of himself unspoken. He is close enough to touch, but never so close that he can be owned. You can be charismatic and open in the moment, even selectively vulnerable, but the tension between what is accessible and what remains protected sharpens longing. When someone feels welcomed into your experience but senses they will never fully possess you, their desire intensifies. In ordinary routines, this shows up in small ways. You respond thoughtfully, but not with frantic speed. You share emotion without breaking down. You invite depth while protecting your schedule and energy. These behaviors send a powerful non-verbal signal. I choose this interaction, but my life is larger than it. That quiet distance increases your gravitational pull. Every hour, every reply, every meeting feels like something earned, not owed. At that point, mystery stops being something you do and becomes the air around you, a subtle atmosphere that invites curiosity, fuels imagination, and quietly strengthens attachment the longer someone remains inside it. In a world soaked in constant stimulation and divided focus, full presence has become so rare that it functions as a form of power. Robert Greene emphasized that the genuine seducer does not prevail by chasing, boasting, or stacking accomplishments in conversation. He wins through the lived quality of the experience he creates around others. That quality depends on one discipline: complete presence. To be with someone entirely, not half listening while your thumb scrolls, not nodding while your mind drafts responses, not split between them and a background hum of worry, turns an interaction into something most people barely recognize anymore. When you meet someone's gaze and truly listen, your attention becomes a kind of gravity. They feel drawn in without quite knowing why. Full presence conveys a message that almost no one has the courage to say aloud. Right now, there is nothing more important than this moment with you. You don't declare it verbally, you embody it with stillness, with steady breath, with pauses that feel intentional rather than awkward. To be truly listened to is so rare that it immediately validates the other person's existence. They stop performing to earn your attention because they can feel they already have it. Their armor starts to slip. In that softening, a subtle but durable trust takes root. Choosing presence means abandoning the urge to impress, to manufacture cleverness on the fly. Instead of rehearsing your next line while the other person speaks, you let go and begin really observing their tone, rhythm, posture, the points where their voice tightens or lightens. You become memorable not because you delivered the perfect phrase, but because you offered what no one else offered: real time, real interest. The discipline to sustain this is extremely rare. Your eyes are the first bridge. They communicate your state before you've formed a word. A calm, held gaze carries quiet confidence. It shows you are not intimidated by connection, nor desperate for it. Greene taught that those who really command the gaze don't need to talk themselves into being believed. Their steadiness alone invites openness. The trick is calibration. Eye contact must be steady enough to show you're anchored, but not so hard that it feels like interrogation. You stay with their eyes as they speak. Drift your focus when it feels organic, but when they share something real, you do not look away. You let them see that every word landed inside you and stayed. That alone builds a kind of intimacy more honest than many confessions. Presence also expresses itself through how you manage silence. In most casual talk, silence is a threat that people rush to fill. In seduction, silence is a resource. Greene observed that only those who feel stable inside can tolerate pauses without scrambling. Silence says you're patient, that you're in no hurry to escape, that you can hold space. Ask a question and then really wait, and you are saying with your body, I can contain whatever comes next. People will tell you far more when you do not compete to speak. After you say something meaningful, refuse to immediately undercut it with chatter. Let quiet expand around your words. Allow them to sink, to echo. Slow your reaction time. When the other person finishes, do not trample their last sentence with an instant reply. Take a breath. Let your eyes stay with them. Then answer. This rhythm tells them they were heard. The respect contained in that small delay is so uncommon that it etches you in memory. Silence is not a void. It functions like the negative space in a painting, shaping the whole. Once you stop fearing it, you realize presence has less to do with how much you say, and more to do with how fully you can share a moment, even when nothing is being spoken. Presence alone, however, is not enough to sustain desire. Just as constant availability erodes mystery, constant presence erodes impact. Greene was blunt about this. Nothing smothers attraction like predictably being there every time someone looks for you. Human beings unconsciously evaluate worth based on availability. What is rare is sought after. What's always within reach slips into the background. Carefully measured absence creates room for the mind to go to work. When you step back from contact, the other person's internal world does not simply go blank. It fills with replayed conversations, guessed meanings, remembered expressions. It is in these empty spaces, not in non-stop interaction, that raw attraction thickens and matures. Most people, terrified of this fact, cling. They mistake sheer proximity for proof of affection. They equate daily contact with depth. But true allure is born in contrast. Your presence has force only if your absence is a possibility. To live this, you must develop the nerve to withdraw even when you feel the pull to extend the moment. After an especially intense meeting, resist the reflex to keep talking, to send another message that night, to prolong the high. Leave the scene cleanly, with a closing that feels complete and warm, and then vanish for a while. Let their memory bear the weight. When you return, arrive without apology, without over-explaining why you were gone. Your absence will only work if it feels like an expression of a full life, not a petty maneuver. Green emphasized that the seducer's retreat is not an act of sulking. It is a demonstration of independence. You step away because your world continues whether they are in that particular hour or not. That posture speaks of self-sufficiency, which is inherently compelling. Emptiness, on the other hand, is not. Someone who is always available, always saying yes, always reachable, begins to feel hollow, like an open room anyone can occupy. The energy of independence looks different. You have to be invited into it. This rhythm of presence and absence only has its full effect when the return is handled with subtlety and strength. After a period of distance, showing up again with a steadiness that suggests you never lost your center is key. No guilt-soaked explanations, no sorry I disappeared, my life is a mess. The person you reintroduce must feel like an evolved version of the one who left, not a diminished one. When you bring something with you, a story, a thought, a piece of insight that only you could share, the contrast between the previous silence and the new offering jolts their attention back awake. All of these external maneuvers rest on an internal base, self-sufficiency. Green's work circles one core idea repeatedly. The most magnetic person in any room is the one who was already complete before they walked in. That does not mean someone who feels nothing for others. It means someone whose sense of self is not contingent on approval, whose emotional weather does not depend on any single outcome. People feel this. They feel when your presence is there because you want it to be, not because you cannot stand to be alone. Self-sufficient energy shows in how you handle time, work, and solitude. A person who has built a life with its own gravity, a craft they care about, a discipline they maintain, a way of thinking they refine, naturally requires less from others. That lack of need does not translate into coldness, it translates into freedom. They are free to enjoy you without clinging. You are free to enjoy them without being conscripted into filling their emptiness. That kind of autonomy is one of the deepest drivers of respect, and respect is the soil in which enduring attraction grows. Once this internal axis is solid, what you say gains additional power. Language stops being a tool for blurring reality and becomes a tool for revealing it in a controlled way. Green knew that while logic can win debates, it rarely moves hearts. Stories do. Telling an experience with structure, setting, tension, meaning, allows someone else to step inside a version of your life for a moment. You are not merely informing, you are transporting. The more vividly you can paint a scene without drowning it in explanation, the more deeply it sinks into memory. Stories should be chosen with intent. They are not random anecdotes. They are coded illustrations of who you are under pressure, what you care about, how you respond to fear, failure, beauty. A simple moment, a quiet train ride in a foreign country, a talk with an old stranger, a setback you turned into something else can be unforgettable if framed correctly. The structure remains the same, beginning that hooks, middle that holds tension, close that reveals a small truth. And in every story, you decide how wide to open the door. enough to let them step in, never so much that your mystery evaporates. Even touch, when approached with this consciousness, works not as a blunt instrument, but as a subtle bridge. The body often receives trust and warmth before the mind agrees to it. A brief contact, aligning with the emotional tone of the moment, can create an anchor that later thought hangs onto. Used without awareness, touch becomes noise or harm. Used with restraint and attention, it becomes a punctuation mark that underlines connection. The final layer in Green's framework is the management of uncertainty. Humans crave certainty, yet are eerily drawn to situations that are not fully resolved. The entire engine of suspense fiction is built on this contradiction. Real-life desire follows the same path. If everything about you is clear, articulated, laid out and labeled, there is nothing left to wonder about. Wonder is not confusion, it is the tension of a question that deserves more time. Healthy ambiguity means offering signals without closing them off with definitive statements. It might be how you respond when asked what you're looking for. It depends on the person. It might be how you talk about your feelings as they form. I'm still discovering what this is. These are not evasions meant to avoid responsibility. They are invitations for the story to continue. The key is that this uncertainty sits atop a foundation of consistency. You can be emotionally stable while leaving some things undefined. All of these elements, mystery, presence, absence, self-sufficiency, narrative, calibrated touch, ambiguity, structured generosity, combine into what Green sometimes described as an aura. An aura is not a mystical halo, it is the cumulative effect of your behaviors, your boundaries, your attention, your timing. When this aura is coherent, other people feel as though meeting you was a meaningful event, not a random conversation. They might label that feeling chemistry, vibe, or even fate, but beneath every romanticized term are simple, consistent patterns you can learn to embody. Seduction, in Green's view, is not about bending others to your will or tricking them into admiration. It is about becoming so grounded, layered, and intentional that the space around you feels charged with possibility, with meaning, with unsolved questions. You stop trying to conquer specific individuals and instead focus on becoming someone whose life and presence exert a natural pull. At that point, you are no longer begging the world for attention. You are quietly drawing it, without apology, without strain.